Hello, I'm glad that you're here. I'm so thankful for you to be here. We want to start our program today by honoring President George H.W. Bush. He was laid to rest today, as we know, and we thank him for his service to our country. And I appreciate that we put politics aside when our leaders pass on. This is wise, and we benefit from it greatly. Today may be the day that you decide to create a blog tour. Why? Because cozy mystery writer Cathy Elliott will show us how she does it. And that always makes it easier, doesn't it? I'm Patricia A Durgin, and this is Marketers on a Mission. We present marketing tutorials and interviews by and for Christian writers, speakers, and artists. This is episode number 188, an easy step-by-step method to create a blog tour with author, speaker, Cathy Elliott. Hello, Cathy. How are you?
Hi. Just fine. Thanks for having me, Patricia.
We're so glad you're here. Barb Haley's already here. Hey, Barb.
Oh, hi,
always
Barb.
good to see you, friend. So let's start off just talking quickly about your work history. You were a library information technician,
Yes.
which I've known a few of people who have that title, and they are very smart. They are very smart. They have to know a lot of information, much more than you would think. Hey, Judy Morrow, it's good to see you. Much more than someone might perceive that a librarian or someone who works in a library would need, isn't it?
Well, it is a lot of information, and you've got to be on call right then because, in my case, I worked in a community college library, a junior college, yeah. And so we had students who needed information right away, and I worked with them and with the instructors, and if I didn't know it, I knew how to find it because I had great training. So it was a very interesting job.
Was it a natural segue for you to go from that, surrounded by words and ideas and concepts and learning, into writing? Was that a natural segue, or did something trigger it?
Well, it was a natural segue. I didn't really even realize that I wanted to be a writer so long as I had wanted to be a writer, because when I told someone that I was going to start seriously writing, that person said, "Oh, you've always wanted to be a writer." And I said, "Oh," surprise to me. But also I love research, which is the blessing and the curse in my case, because I can lose myself in it. I've done it so much and always find treasure. So I have to limit myself from that. But in a library, that's, A1 job.
I suffer the same fate. I can absolutely, I would be very content to live the rest of my life just doing research.
Yeah.
But God has not called me to spend my life doing research, so I have to wean myself.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, Kate Barker. She says, hello, Cathy.
Oh, hi, Kate.
So glad you're here, Kate.
Yeah.
Let's see. You are a speaker and an author of 3 books. You're working on your 4th. You're also a contributor to Guideposts. So how did that opportunity come your way, Cathy?
Well, first, it was actually something presented to me through my agent at the time, and that was a lovely opportunity. I didn't know, it was a little bit out of my wheelhouse, so to speak. I wasn't sure, but it was wonderful. As always, doing that sort of thing just grows you, and I love doing it. And so the book came out in May of this year, I believe. Every Day with Jesus, and I think I have 8. I think about that. Devotionals in it, along with a lot of great company. And then they contacted me again to write for a new book coming out, another devotional with 365 devotions in it, called All God's Creatures. And I thought, boy, I don't know, I'm not the best with all of that. I don't even have a creature, but but I like creature. But I also knew that it was an open door and an opportunity that God had given me, and I like to walk through those doors. So I did, and it was a tremendous blessing. I wrote 15 for them, and so we'll see how many make it to the end. They're still choosing, but that's that was a delicious experience, really.
Guideposts is when you say that you've been a contributor or an author for Guideposts, people perk up, and that's immediate recognition, quality, organization. It just takes you to another level, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just a treat to be among those folks, and to be chosen to work on that project was a lovely blessing for me. Yeah.
Judy Morrow says, "Hi, dear Cathy and Patricia. I so get the love of research."
Well, Judy's a library person too.
I've never been a librarian, but I have spent many hours in libraries.
Yes.
Along with about 5 billion other people. But it's just my cup of tea. It really is. Let's talk about you. You love antiques.
I do.
You love quilts.
I do.
You love to garden. You like tea by the fire.
I do.
Were you born too late?
I was, apparently. That's a good insight there, Patricia. I really do love those things that bring nostalgia, I think, and things. I like things that have meaning and that have a story, that are handed down. It's a sweet little environment there that I love to visit. Maybe live in.
Are you the first in your family line to have these passions, or did you inherit them?
I think I'm the first to. Yeah, I think I'm the first, actually, that I'm aware of. Mm-hmm. My mother was an extremely talented musician. She gave concerts at the age of 12. Oh. She was really good, and she played music to the last. When she was in a residential care, she would play all the oldies. Poor Butterfly and When the Saints and all those, just tons of beautiful old things, and the people knew them because they'd grown up with them, and so she blessed the house with her form of artistry, and it's a nice thing that God does with that, and gives it to us for our own benefit, and then for the benefit of others too. It's
well said.
Kindness.
Did your daughter inherit these passions from you?
She does have a lot of them. I mean, she likes antiques. She enjoys beautiful quilts, handmade quilts especially. Her home is very charming, and one of the things I love about Heidi is how she makes everything special. I think she took whatever I had and went with it, because she decorates for every holiday, and her kids know what's going, they can see the seasons through her the loveliness that she surrounds them with in the house. And when she sends you a card or letter, it's like a party in your mailbox, because it's just full of stickers and diamonds, and she makes her own cards. She loves doing that, and she's very talented in many ways, many ways. So I'm lucky with that.
She sounds like a friend we need.
Yes, she's a friend we need. She's adorable.
Going back to the spirit of gentility, I saw one of your recent blog posts that you titled "My Beautiful Word of Honor," but you explained how you make the dreary task of bill paying a pleasant experience. It's actually an experience, not just something on our to-do list.
Yeah.
And you got that concept from someone else, and you made it your own. Will you tell us about that?
Yeah, I did. I actually was given a book by my friend Barbara Nakow years and years ago. Or maybe I bought the book. I can't remember. I got the book by Alexandra Stoddard, who was an interior designer. She's still around, and her book is still in print. It's been updated, and it's called Living a Beautiful Life. And there were a couple things that I remember from it. One of them is you should have a touch of yellow in every room. And the other was how I made that drudgery of paying bills into something beautiful. And she talked about buying, having beautiful pins, lovely stationery, get stamps that you love, put on music, put flowers out, have a snack, just make the whole thing fun, more than it is. And I did all that. And even though in somewhere along that journey and all those years of doing that, part Alexandra and part my family probably, because my father was a very honorable man, a naval officer, Pearl Harbor survivor, and so he taught us a lot about honor. And one of the things that I always have ended up with is keeping your word, and how important it is to keep your word. Don't say it if you're not going to do it, and keep your word. And so it's a beautiful thing to me. So even though now I pay a lot of mail electronically, for me, that has kind of morphed into the beauty of keeping your word. And
I love that connection.
Oh, thank you.
And I am, I've just recently, in the last 3 years, been exposed to this idea of, which I love, and immediately I loved it, about whatever it is that you're talking about, the task, whether it's a vacation or a task at home, make it an experience that you look forward to, and or that you can do more than tolerate. And so we're not robots. We're not just mechanisms, just checking off the list.
Right. That's a good word.
Judy Morrow says, Cathy is talking my language, since we both love all things antique.
Yes, Judy is, and also Kate. Kate owns an antique store. These are my tribe, and I'm there for them.
Judy also says, I've also felt that I was born in the wrong era, but I'm grateful for modern conveniences and painkillers. All the titles I've seen, your headlines, your book titles, the way that you have a flair with titles and subtitles, I really appreciate the way that you communicate.
Oh, thank you.
There's a skill to this. This isn't, this is a gift. Because you've got the skill, but then God has ramped it up, and it's a gift. And it's pretty amazing.
Wow, thank you.
You know yourself a lousy title. And yours are very intriguing. 2 or 3 that I noticed on your options of speaking topics.
Right.
Turn rejection into redirection.
Right.
Okay. Nobody's talking about that. That is so necessary, though, isn't? Don't sit and wallow and scrape your sores. Turn it into something else. And I'm not asking you to give me that presentation right now, but it's so revelatory of what's in your heart and how you think, that turn rejection into redirection. I've not heard anybody say anything like that, Cathy.
Well, it's hard to talk about rejection. Nobody really wants to talk about it. And but for me, those opportunities are not missed opportunities, but they're times where you can take that message and change it up. And sometimes it can be about you, but oftentimes it's not really a personal thing. It's maybe timing, it could be preparation, but often there are reasons that for a rejection that can give you the confidence to go on. Maybe it's not your time here, or maybe and I'm talking particularly about book contract, and maybe someone's gonna offer you a contract at a different place. I mean, I know that going through having my book shopped around, having my books, there were times when, of course, I think the first book got 14 rejections, and then at the end, and it was like, oh well, okay, then my agent at the time was saying, well, you just need one yes, and which was right. And she would say, no wine before it's time. And I'm going, those sorts of things help you to see it in another way, that to redirect your thoughts so that it's not a negative. It's a wait and see. You know, and I figure everything is Father filtered anyway. If it's time for this to happen, then it will happen. And if it's not time, then it's okay waiting is good. I love the waiting room actually, because that's where a person they have something that they don't have on the other side. And that's anticipation. And anticipation is lovely. You can dream and you can think about how it's going to be, and on the other side it might not quite be that, but the anticipation, you kind of don't know how good you have it until you leave that room. It's a good place to be.
Yes. I totally agree. And that takes me right back to another one of the topics that you deliver on before the book, before the book, The Art of Creative Waiting. I've never heard that before. Creative waiting, usually it's the doldrums, we're scraping our sores, nobody's had it as bad as we've had it, and you've just got a different take on it altogether.
Well, it's one of the things I think I said before is that I like those opportunities that God gives you, and I like those I call them little yeses in between the big yes. And for me, the contracts have been sort of separated out, and partly my fault, partly not my fault. No worries, it's how it is. And in between that, I like to do other things. That's not happening now, but this is happening now. And so then I build my resume, and I write articles, and I'll do, like I did 10 children's books for it's called Perfection Learning and Company, and corporation, and they do books in the classroom. So you're not going to find it in Barnes and Noble, but I always thought that maybe I would like to do some children's books. And when I first started writing, I wasn't sure what I was going to write, but I thought maybe some children's books, maybe some devotionals, and I've been able to do all those things in between actual book contracts. And so I was able to live my dream even without really pursuing it that much, because the opportunities came and the doors opened, and I said yes. So that's, for me, that's creative waiting.
Well, you explained it very well.
Thank you.
I'm intrigued by it, and I will be remembering that, because the waiting room, every obedient Christian spends time in the waiting room.
That's right.
There's no getting around it. And if you do, it's because you've stepped out of his will. So, bad news. Judy Morris is Father filtered. She loves that phrase.
Hey, I use that especially, that comforts me on Sunday mornings when I have music and I'm up there singing with my okay voice, only okay. And I think, well, by the time it hits the microphone and gets out to the people, the Lord has done whatever he will do with it, because it's Father filtered. So maybe it'll sound better out there. And I just don't stress about it. But I have a good team, so it works.
Excuse me. Well, let's talk about your books. You've written 3 so far that are in the market, not counting the 10 you just mentioned. But you specialize in a cozy mystery. What is your definition? I like your definition of a cozy mystery. What is that to you?
Well, this is my favorite definition I've ever seen of a cozy mystery. It's cats or quilts and not a lot of blood. It was great. And so when I first heard that, I was sure to do that. I had a quilt in my book, or more than one quilt. I had a cat, little Betty, who was my main character, Thea's love, and then of course everything bad happens off stage, so that you don't have to live through the ugliness of that. And so yeah, cozy mysteries are really fun, and when we think of a cozy mystery, it's going to be set in like a confined place, like maybe an apartment building or a rest home or a hospital, or it could be in a small town, a village of some sort, but somewhere where everybody knows one another and interacts, and you always have an amateur sleuth. That's the main thing. Once that amateur sleuth becomes a cop, then you're into a different kind of mystery from there. So,
I like my television shows to fit that same description, but they are few and far between these days.
It's true.
Can't even watch commercials sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so we've got this was the first book that you wrote, A Vase of Mistaken Identity, again showing your creativity with titles.
Thank you.
And then we have A Stitch in Crime, again taking a regular phrase that we're all familiar with and playing off of it. And I must say, the back cover copy of both of these is so attention-getting and spot on, filled with action. It draws me in immediately. I'm a big reader, but if I wasn't, I still would want to read both of these books because you've done such a good, no meandering involved. You've done such a good job of helping me understand what's going on and making me want to know more.
Nice. Thank you. I appreciate that.
In fact, I was reading A Vase of Mistaken Identity, and I found myself consuming it when I want to savor it.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
So I stopped consuming, even though I enjoyed what I had consumed. I want to take the time, and you paint the most beautiful pictures. I see exactly what you're talking about. And when we're talking about antique shops and quilting events, people in a small town, I mean, you really paint the picture very, very well.
Oh, thank you very much. That's wonderful to hear.
I like also that in each of the books, well, I'm not sure. I haven't got to Stitch in Crime, but knowing you, I'm sure that this fits. The gospel is here. It's subtle, but it's here. You don't back off of it. You create scenes where it would be a necessary part if you're a believer, and you just make a natural segue. This is who we are. This is part of our life. And then when it's time to feed the baby and milk the cat, we'll just go do those things too. We don't live in that. You know, that some people think that if you write something that has religiosity in it, that it's in the clouds.
True.
But you've added heavenly truth in the ordinary story. And made it extraordinary.
That was the hope. I really sometimes I've read books that give a very good message, but they might feel a little contrived. Mm-hmm. You know, like I have to get this message in there, and not really part of the story. I don't see that so much anymore. But I wanted to write something that anyone could read, and not feel, I mean, I wanted them to be drawn to Christ, that there would be something in there. When a friend of mine said it really well, that she wanted to write in such a way that Christ was on every page, even if his name was never mentioned.
Yes.
And I kind of took that for my own, you know, and that was the goal. I'm fallen very, very short, but the journey and the attempt was a great blessing, and I appreciate that you've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh yes, and we'll be following up with this one as well.
Okay, awesome.
I started with the larger one, both because it was the first one, and I wanted to get the larger one under my belt and get a handle on Thea.
Yeah, right. Yes.
I fell in love with her in the first 2 pages.
Well.
And here's the ultimate compliment from me, and as a reader, I typically skip to the end of the book to say how it ends, to decide if I want to read it. I haven't done that, and I'm not going to do that.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
That's a sideways compliment, but it's sincere.
It's nice. I appreciate it. It's a great compliment.
We have a new viewer. Hello, new viewer, whose name I do not know. We are frozen on Facebook. Our screens are frozen. We are continuing our interview, though. That was a group consensus decision. We will have the live video recording tonight. Usually that's not available that quickly, but we're going to make that happen so that we can continue this conversation and keep the thread going at the same time. It will be available to you. You can see our lovely faces at the same time. That's the way it's supposed to work. So now, quilting is which came first, did you love quilts, and so you got into writing about quilts and the Stitching Crime Quilts of Love series? Or did you love them? Were they your first, and then you started writing stories that included quilts? Or did you start writing stories that included quilts and then fell in love with them?
That's kind of a hard one. I think that I've always loved them, but not. And I did I had started doing some quilting, taking some quilting classes and things. But once I started the book and began to spend so much time in Thea's world, it made me love and notice all the things about her world around me that I could include in the book, and give authenticity. And so I decided to, when I put together my idea for Thea, in fact, the first, it was in one of my initial times at visits to our local writing group, Quills of Faith, that Kate belongs to now, and so do I, that I was just at the beginning of my journey as a serious writer, and I didn't know what I was going to write. And so, as I said, I thought about devotionals, I thought about children's books, and Cindy Coloma, who's my mentor, told me, why don't you think about writing a mystery? Because we'd been talking about mysteries, and because I worked in a library, I was just bipping off all these titles because I'm used to seeing them all the best of everything all the time. And so anyway, I said, well, but do you think that would be okay as a Christian to write about murder? And I was really innocent. And so she said, Cathy, I do think that some Christians do have murder in their lives. So I think it would be something that, be okay to write about. And I thought, oh. And so on my way home, I dreamed up Thea. By the time I got home, I knew she'd own an antique shop. And by the time I got home, I was real into her character, and I sat down and wrote 4 pages of character analysis for her. And the story just came after that, and the shop and the people and the population of Larkindale. And I even I just got so into it, I even created like 100 years ago, a history of the town, and I had a whole year's worth of events that were going on, and I just honestly, I loved that whole endeavor. It was just a delight to my heart.
It sounds like it. It absolutely sounds like it.
Oh,
Characters' names are so intriguing. Curly's Minor Diner. Thea, of course, Maureen Pickett. Maureen Pickett, poor lady.
I know.
That's the waitress at Curly's Minor Diner.
Yes, it's quite a handle, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And then, of course, the list of that starts the mystery has 4. What to me is going back in time to a different, maybe the Victorian era for some of the names. The way they're spelled and so forth and put together.
Yeah. And I had recently read George Eliot's Middlemarch, and so I was very in love with the characters there. So I used a couple of those characters to name Theodora and Rosamond, the Thea. So even though they call her Doro in the book, and it just stuff came from everywhere, from all the things I love. I put them in the book. And one lesson that I learned as I was writing it, and I learned it from Erlene Fowler, a well-known cozy mystery writer who writes the Benny Harper series, and I had a chance to talk to her, and she said to put, don't worry about anything, just put it all in the book, and I was afraid that if I put all my good stuff out there, I wouldn't have anything for the next book. Yeah. So I depended on that. And of course, God is a never-ending fountain, and I found that it was okay to put all the things I loved, all my best stuff in the book, to my ability at the time, and there was still plenty for the next book, and so on. So I can trust that will be there when I need it.
He's the one that generates the ideas, isn't he?
Yes, he does. He does, and yeah.
So he gives us the ideas that he wants us to work with today, and in a year or 6 years or 3 years, whatever the number is, months, whatever, then we're working with the ideas that he gives us that day.
Yes, that's right. He's faithful.
Yes, he is. Oh, thank you, Father. He certainly is. Thank you, Father. If he has gifted us, and he's gifted you, that's for sure.
Oh, thank you.
He will oversee that whole operation, won't he? The organization, the ideas, the relationships, the conferences. Speaking of which, what was the first writers' conference that you went to? Do you happen to remember?
I do. I remember very well. It was Mount Hermon Writers' Conference in where is that famous place? Down by Santa Cruz.
They happen to be.
Well, it's in Mount Hermon. That's where it is. And I remember when I first was writing, and Cindy Coloma, my who just automatically became my mentor, took an interest in me, and she was so wonderful, still is. And I had written a chapter soon after I got busy on Thea. Then I wrote this chapter, which I call Molly's chapter. I think it's the best chapter I ever wrote. Never made it to a book, but because it was the wrong point of view. But I didn't know that at the time. I was ready to write a cozy mystery, and I didn't even know what point of view I should be in. I just I was going to write from her point of view, from the killer's point of view, from all these points of view. And of course, a cozy mystery is only in the protagonist's point of view. But I didn't know that at the time. And so I asked her if she would read the chapter, and she read it. And she said, I think you're farther along than you think you are. And because I had actually been taking writer classes and I read the Writer magazine every month, faithfully, from cover to cover, for years and years. And working at the library, I got it before the students. So students. But it was a little perk. I read all the writing books, and so unbeknownst to me, I did have while I was had no information about some things, I had a lot of information about other things, and so I was able to go. It was time for me to go, and she said, "You just need to do a cover letter, 2 chapters, and write up a synopsis." And I said, "Okay." And then I turned to my friend. I said, "What's a synopsis?" I don't know. But since I worked in the library, I figured I could find out and not bother Cindy with that. So anyway, I went there and hoping for affirmation, and was there a reason that I should do this, and am I fooling myself, and that kind of thing. And it was just a lovely, lovely experience. And I did get that affirmation, and that it was okay for me to write, that maybe God had something for me there. So
so we need that. I wish we didn't, but we need that. We need that confirmation. Right. This is you. This is good. This is from God. Keep moving forward.
Well, I had seen others who had that talk of affirmation, self-talk of affirmation, but yet when I read their work, I didn't know for sure that they should have that affirmation. If you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so you don't want to do that. You want to be balanced. You want to know the truth. You want to tell yourself the truth. And so if it was something that I was fooling myself, why waste my time or other people's time? But if I had some sort of ability in that area, then I was willing to put my nose to the grindstone and get the skills and learn and jump through the hoops. Mm-hmm. No problem with that for me. I was happy to do it. And I loved every part of the journey. I love editing, in fact, too much, and the research, as we've talked about, too much. But I think the most precious part are the beautiful friendships and writer connections that you make along the way. That is lovely. All of that is better than a contract, really, to me. Those lasting friendships, and it's a wonderful place to be in the writing world, on the writing path. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
To be surrounded by people who their values are yours, their mission is yours, their passion is yours.
Yeah.
There's just not that many opportunities in regular life for that to happen. You don't hear about engineers getting together and talking about their godly mission, even though it could happen. That's not what they're known for. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
Barb says, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Barb says, love it when I get the book plotted, start writing, and have the characters totally ignore my plot.
That happens.
They do have minds of their own sometimes, don't they?
Yeah, sometimes you have to rewrite that synopsis at the end so it matches the book.
Hey, Dee Lundgren, it's good to see you today. Our screen is frozen, but we're working around it. So if you could just listen, then later tonight I'll do my very best to have this recorded video uploaded into my YouTube channel, and I'll link to it here. So we talked about the back cover copy. It was so wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, let's talk about another an unusual thing that can happen to writers. You recently decided to change your protagonist's name for your upcoming book because another author was using it.
Yes.
And your names were similar already. Then the main characters' names were similar. That's just an unusual thing that sometimes happens. How did you find out about that?
Well, I saw a blog. I was checking my blog, and I saw this blog that I follow with an article about. It's called A Day in the Life that she does. I've done it too for Thea, and she highlights people. It's Drew's Book Musings, really a great book blog, and so this one was had the name Addie Grayborn, and I think that was it, Grayborn, and plus the author was Lauren Elliott. Elliott spelled the exact same way, which you don't see that often. I call it the correct spelling.
I do too.
Two T's, but anyway, and I thought, oh, I need to look at that. And then as I read through the interesting little article about her protagonist, I realized that was just all too close. The Elliott, the Addie, because mine was Addie Gray, and the Grayborn, and so. I contacted her, and she was gracious enough to get back in touch with me, and we talked back and forth a little bit about, this was her first cozy that came out. I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Lauren Elliott. It's already a bestseller, so it's good. I bought it. But anyway, read it, but I bought it. And so she had some input into what I did, and I decided to change my character from Addie to Abby, which is maybe a little more common, but it's cute and I like it. Mm-hmm. And then and her name will be Abigail, which will be good because she has a grandma Gail and she can call her Gigi. I just, it's all working out. And then I changed the last name of Gray. I thought about the name Graham, which is close, and I like those soft last names like Thea James and Addie Gray, and so I thought maybe Graham, and then I remembered that Graham is a kind of a pioneer family name of mine, my great grandma Graham, and they lived in Sisters, where I'm putting the book in and around the Sisters area. And there was a big Graham ranch out there, and I thought that would be perfect. That feels like family. That feels like history. And then I got an email from Lauren. She says, "How about Graham?" And I'm like, well, that's affirmation there, And so that's her name, is Abby Graham. And so I'm working on giving her a life now.
Barb says she forgot to mention in her earlier comment that she believes that whole process of plotting and so forth and the characters going off on their own sometimes that's the Holy Spirit driven, and that's true.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it's usually better than what we've plotted.
Yes. I mean, he's given us creativity, but it's not more creative than his own.
Yes, for sure.
He's in charge. He's in charge. Judy says, I was blessed to meet Cathy, you, at the Mount Hermon Christian Writers Conference. God has so blessed me with her dear friendship over the years.
Aww.
I've really enjoyed the interview. Thanks, Cathy, for inspiring me to get going on my first attempt at a novel.
Yes, absolutely. It's a given, Judy. You're going to do it, and it'll be wonderful.
Well, that is very exciting.
Yeah, that was part of the beauty of the first conference that I went to, was meeting Judy, and I had known about her because she's a good friend of Cindy's, and then she also knows my brother who lives in Quincy, my brother and sister-in-law who live in Quincy, as does Judy, and so I just couldn't wait to meet her, and she was just lovely, and I actually met with her later when she was working for Multnomah in Sisters, Oregon. We had lunch, and we've just had a sweet connection all these years, and I call that one of my principal blessings from the Mount Hermon Conference is Judy and her friendship, and she was affirming too, so I appreciated it. She was encouraging. In fact, I got a wonderful writer gig from knowing her. I went to her Night Owl. This is one of those yeses. And I hadn't even written the Thea book yet, but I went to the Night Owl that Judy gave about stories from the heart, because she was overseeing that with Alice Gray, and they were doing one, and she was just talking about children. I think she was talking about children's writing then. And then I got on the email list, and a few weeks later, I got a personal email, dear writer. I call that personal because, for me it is. And she talked about needing more stories for the heart. That is also something I count on. Those I call them my private invitations. We need more. That means maybe I can get in there. We're short on stories. So I went ahead and emailed back. And I just had a little memory from high school, but I was able to think about it, and I am a little wordy, as we see, and so I was able to make that into a story, and she accepted it, and so I was able to get a lovely story in that anthology, Stories for the Heart, for the Teens Heart, book 3 from Multnomah. And it was a lovely, lovely clip to have, and a wonderful accomplishment, really. And I got that out of that Mount Hermon Night Owl, and meeting Judy, and later knowing her much better. So it was great.
You never know who you're going to meet, but you're not going to meet them if you don't go to the conferences.
That's true.
Kate Barker says, Cathy has been an inspiration to me also, and such a wonderful friend and encourager. She's like a sister mentor to me. Great job today, y'all.
Oh, thank you, Kate.
You're using y'all correctly. I already like Kate.
She's a gem. Yes, you should know her better.
Well, tell us about your blog tour. How did you create it? What did you learn from it? How can we go about duplicating some of those techniques?
Okay. Well, first of all, if anybody doesn't know what a blog tour is, it's like a book tour, but it's not traveling from event to event or store to store, book signing, and so on. It's an online tour. You travel right from the seat of your chair, and you go from blog to blog. And so I had seen some of those out there, and I thought, as Thea was, actually it was for A Stitch in Crime, and I thought as it was getting ready to be published, and I knew the date, then I thought this might be something I should do, because I wanted to be the partner, the good partner with Abington Press, who were wonderful to me. I loved writing for them, and so I wanted to do my part, and I thought this would be a good thing to do to help push the book when it was published. So it's also a wonderful PR way to reach readers and followers of that particular blog that you're targeting,
right?
And that will encourage them to read the book, hopefully buy the book, and it gives you visibility, and visibility gives you hope for your for your book sales, which of course you kind of need to get that next contract. So and it also just creates interest in your book. So an average blog tour might be 20 to 50 stops, which is a lot. You can make that decision. I decided, I think about 20 was what I was targeting. And so as soon as I knew my release date, which in that year was January 20th, I was able to begin to plan. And so I planned almost a year in advance when I would see, because I didn't know what I was doing. So, I mean, I looked online, got a little information, but what I did was I especially took advantage of the connection with ACFW, American Christian Fiction Writers group. And they would have people on there that said, come over to my blog, so-and-so I'm highlighting so-and-so on my blog, or I need people for blog guests. And so I began to look at those, and anything that looked like it might fit with what I was doing, I would email that person and say, I have a book coming out January 20th. I know it's only May of the year before, but if you have openings for a blog guest, that time, would you please consider me? I'd be delighted to give a book for giveaway as well, if that's something that you would like, because that's a big plus. It really attracts more people to the blog that day. And I think everyone that I emailed said yes. It was just, I really hate to ask for things. I'm trying to get over that, but it was, but in this case, it was just all sort of already, the path was already made for me, and I was able to book all these different ones. And when you do those, you're going to be, maybe are asked to write a guest blog post, and that might be something like the story behind the story, or something interesting about your book, or even something that would relate, that might be about like a Christmas theme thing, or something that you could bring in, or whatever the season is that would work for that blog. You might be doing an interview, and in that case, they'll send you the questions ahead of time, and then you answer them, send it back, and plus the information that they've asked for, or just a book spotlight, where it's really, because they highlight books and all the time, and yours will be on there with the back blurb and the book cover image and so on. And of course, this can all be set up by your publishing house, but if they choose to do it. But I didn't know anything, and I thought I better get out there and get this together. So I did so, and I looked for any kind of opportunity that I saw. And one of the things that is helpful is if you look, when you're targeting your blog tours, and I didn't do that as much, but it kind of was in the back of my mind. Now I probably would be more careful about that, is to look for blogs that are within your genre. Like a mystery blog, a suspense blog would work for me. There aren't that many cozy blogs. There were a couple that I targeted, but so that would be good. Any kind of a quilting blog would work for me. Any kind of a antique blog would work for me, really. I mean, I didn't do all of those, and I would do them now. You learn as you go. Things, take out more within your book, the things that people will be reading if they read your book. And then if you can find a blog with a huge audience, that's nice.
Certainly is.
That's nice. But most of mine probably weren't. And but that's okay too, because the connections that you make with these folks, sometimes they will ask you back, and it's just another lovely writerly connection that you make through that adventure in publicity. So let's see, was there anything here I wanted to? That was kind of the way it went. You have to there's a lot of record keeping that you need to be aware of, because each one is going to send you, each host is going to send you the requirements to be on that person's blog. It might mean that you also list, you list your Facebook, you list your Twitter, you list your blog, you list the 5 top places that the book can be purchased, or maybe a couple of those things. Maybe they don't want as much. You can't just make out something and give it all to them. But if you make something up ahead of time that you can pull from, that would be helpful. You need an author bio, maybe a smaller one, maybe a little bit bigger one, for different needs. You need an author picture, and then the cover image, of course, and the back cover copy. I had some of them would ask for the first chapter, which I had permission to give, so I did that. Would send that. I put that on my blog too, and so I think that if you start ahead of time, you can get those things orchestrated and look forward to that and be ready for that. So I think that if you start ahead of time, you can get those things. I'm hearing myself. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And, no, that's okay. And then you want to also be ready to offer books for giveaway. They might ask you if you would be interested in doing that. I always say yes. This is not the time to be stingy with your books. It's a good time to get your books out there. For me, having people read them is the most important thing. So it's wonderful to have something to gift. I mean, in the waiting room, you don't have anything to give. So, except for encouragement to somebody else. But anyway, then you might need to do a lot of writing because of all these articles and guest posts that you may be doing. It depends on the site and what they're doing, what they highlight, and so. That's I think that I wrote 29 articles for my homegrown tour. And then I had another tour as well, which I'll mention in a second. And then you want to keep really good records. I probably do some sort of an Excel program if I do it again. But at that time, I just had it in a Word document. I would put the newest one, or I'd keep the dates straight. And I'm a real highlighter kind of person, and I would highlight in yellow that the date, and then when it went live, I would change it over to hot pink. That one's out there, that one's done, and I would let myself know that I needed to send a book, and what date or whatever, and or if I had sent a book, and so that was it was very, very important because you can't miss those deadlines. You can't miss that wonderful opportunity someone has given you. Doing you a favor, really giving someone a book is small potatoes compared to what that host is doing for you and for your career. So you want to keep your word, keep that beautiful word. It's very, very important in all things. And then I was going to mention that when I got mine all planned pretty much, but the book had just come out. I found out from the publishing company that they were organizing a book tour, a blog tour for me, and I thought, wait. So I had to double up. Theirs was, I think, about a month long. They can be in different increments according to who did your does the tour. They have a publicity firm that they use, and so I would get these emails from the the marketing director saying, "Can you write an article for such and such?" And I go, "Okay, sure." And I mean, I was too busy to live, but it was also wonderful. That was a wonderful kind of busyness. So I was doing my own stuff, all my own little blog things, and then I had this 1 month long tour that it was a wonderful push. I had never had a publishing company do that for me before, so that was lovely of them to put that behind the book. My Stitch and Crime, that was a part of the Quilts of Love series, and they were just closing it down, and I was the last one in the series. There were 25 books. I was number 25, and my editor, Ramona Richards, said, "You're the caboose." So that was kind of an honored spot, and that was great fun, and I really appreciated all of it. But I was doubly busy, so you want to think about that if your publishing company is giving you a tour, whether you want to also give your own blog tour to yourself. It might be a little much, but it was great. And so if you want to, what I've been talking about is really how I did it, kind of off-grid, homegrown sort of thing. But if you wanted to hire someone, they have all kinds of new things that they're doing now. I contacted my marketing director from old, and she gave me a name, which I'll give to you. It's called Just Read Tours. Just Read Tours, and it's justreadtours.com. And she recommends them highly. They do a wonderful job. They are fairly priced. And they have things like bookstagrams that they do now, which I think that's very, very, according to how things are going now. Instagram is such a big deal, and so they have this bookstagram they do. They have cover reveals. They do blog hops. They have reviewers, which is kind of what Abington did for me. A lot of my books went out ahead of time, and reviewers reviewed the book and then hosted me. So, and then those reviewers all wrote reviews on Amazon and other places. So that was helpful because folks don't always come up with those reviews. You hope they will, but they don't always, and they have book blitzes, and they do graphics and just all kinds of things. So sounds like a wonderful company. I was looking at their website, and it's very appealing. So I'll keep them in mind should I need them in the future. So.
I'll add that to the links that I have for your Facebook page and your author page and Amazon and so forth. Barbara has a question. Do you post different blogs each time? I'm not sure I'm understanding that exactly. Do you understand that?
I think she means on the blog tour. And yes, none of them were the same, which is why it was so much work. Separate articles. Each one is a unique article. Yes, unique. Each one unique. Okay. The only things that might be the same is if it was a book highlight, then I would go ahead and put the same back cover copy, same bio. It's going to look pretty much like the others that are that way. But they were almost different assignments from people. An interview, I would get totally original questions, and you wouldn't think so, but I did. But it was good. It caused me to think about things that I hadn't thought about in a long time, and maybe dig a little deeper, which gave me information on the spot in another venue. So it was helpful.
When you first started out, I had a question. When you very first started out, we're almost closing out, viewers. So if you have a question or a comment, please send them in. And we'd be glad to answer them. When you first started the initial contacts for the homegrown version of the blog tour, where did you get the list, or did you create one by researching, or did you just have in your relationships you already had created? How did you know who to contact? Now, at the time, you already mentioned earlier that was sort of a little bit generic, and you would do it more refined search now. But regardless of that, do you contact them and say, I've got something going on, I would like to tell your viewers about it? Or how does that work? That very initial contact?
Yeah, for the most, I think initially, and I wasn't as courageous as I might be now in those days. You know, it feels like a big favor, and do you mind? And even though they were doing it for other people, but anyway, I would, as I mentioned, I used that ACFW that I'd been a member of many, many years. And I used their link. I mean, the people that would post, I would go and see what they were doing. And then, of course, there was always a contact, some sort of contact. Either I could usually just reply to the email on the ACFW after I checked and thought, well, maybe I would be a fit on this one. So I'm gonna check. I can't do it now. I can't do it during the time frame that they want to, but they need a blog post, a guest post, and so I'm gonna see if they're open to that, and then I would just reply to that email. Now, sometimes I would see some kind of a neat suspense blog, and they weren't on ACFW, and I would just go to the contact. But they were highlighting authors or books, and I would go to the contact part and just, kind of, hey, whoever, only not that, but, it was take a chance. And often that worked out well too, because they were open to new authors. And so that was great.
So you did go in blind a few times and it still worked out fine.
Yes, it all worked out well for me. Because I had looked and seen what they post and what they like. I would like to be a part of this, and there was I don't think I had any bad experiences at all. I did my homework. I did my research.
Research. Judy says, I so enjoyed this, Cathy and Patricia. Thanks. Fun to learn about doing a blog tour. You're very welcome, Judy.
Yeah, thank you, Judy.
Let me check on the other location and see if we have any comments or questions over there. I want to make sure we cover everybody. Looks like we're good. All right. So you have helped us understand how to do a blog tour step by step. You contact people either blind and or after doing your research to know they are likely going to want to host you, talk about your topic, or the fact that even that you're a writer and that you have a book. Different people have different parameters that they work from.
Right.
And you're homegrown where you kept to 20, and it sounds like it was a good thing.
Yes.
If you had 50 and then the Abingtons on top of that, you would have been insane.
I know. That's true.
It would have been crazy. Let's see.
One other thing I want to add, and that is that one other requirement that will be asked of you when you're doing a blog tour, whether it's homegrown or whether it's a company, is that you will need to go in several times a day and check that blog for comments and answer them. Comment yourself, and then the last thing is be sure to send a thank you note to that blog host, because that's a great favor that they've done for you.
You want to be a good guest, don't you?
Yes. You want to say yes if you ask to come back.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for telling us your story, how you work, how Christ has molded your excellent, let's show the books again.
Oh, thank you.
A Vase of Mistaken Identity and A Stitch in Crime. And number 4 is coming out. It'll be next year sometime probably, or even 2020.
God willing. I don't know yet, but God willing, it will be, it'll be in His time, whatever that is.
Okay.
It won't be too long. I'll post that.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Miss Cathy Elliott, spelled with 2 T's, and that is the correct way to spell it.
2 L's, 2 T's. Thank you.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you for being tolerant of the technical glitches so that we could continue the interview and get you the information that both Cathy and I wanted you to have, that you came for, and the visuals will be added later tonight. This has been Marketers on a Mission, episode number 188. and easy, step-by-step, and very understandable, very clear. I understood what you were saying, Cathy, to create a blog tour. I messed up that headline. Let me say it again. Episode number 188, an easy step-by-step method to create a blog tour with author and speaker Cathy Elliott. Tomorrow, author and speaker Penelope Carl-Vito. I'm not sure 100% I haven't heard that pronounced yet. Carl-Vito will join me. She's built an amazing platform for her unique niche. She's going to share two major ways that supporting large events helps her market her books. And this is always God's way, isn't it, Cathy? We help someone and they turn and help us.
Yes, all along the path, for sure.
Some people do it so that they get the help, but it's God's way is to do the help, and then sometimes you get return favor.
Yes, that's true.
We're here every weekday at 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern for you. This program is designed to help you learn the craft of professional writing and speaking from those who are already doing it, particularly those online, because our market is online. Our mission is online. So we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks very much for joining us.